Department of Homeland Security is still going to continue the work. All right, so don't get your hopes up. Don't make yourself too happy, because the declaration for the future of the internet is already written. So even if the the Disinformation Governance Board is no longer existent, DHS is going to be working for the accomplishment of the declaration for the future of the internet, which includes the managing of misinformation and disinformation. All right, so continuing, so we'll be focusing on this new law, this new declaration that was recently done by Congress, the White House, and has over 60 signatories to it, including Jamaica and some other Caribbean islands. And it should concern everyone, because the title alone is sufficient to make us recognize that we need to pay careful attention to it. And remember, we're looking at these laws especially in context of the stage that was just set, and how we looked at the 21st Century Cures Act that made it, that opened the door for the acceleration, production of the vaccine, distribution of the vaccine. And then now we saw 2021 where the reign of oppression and vaccine mandate and social demands and restrictive measures were put in place. So now we're going to be looking at the Declaration for the Future of the Internet. Declaration for the Future of the Internet Act, and what possible effects could it have on us as citizens, because we're not looking at these things in isolation now, we're looking at them in terms of the bigger picture. All right, and we're reviewing these things so that we can be prepared. God doesn't want us to be ignorant. He says, and that knowing the time, that now is high time to awake out of sleep. And so I'm here, the alarmist is here, the alarmist report is here to help you to be aware of what is happening around you, so that you can be a little bit paranoid, so that you can be prepared, but not just paranoid, but spiritually balanced and accepting the grace of God to enable you to be an overcomer. All right, so we're going to look at some points laid out in the declaration. I read through that document myself, and I was able to glean out some things that may open itself to abuse, and that may open itself to taking advantage of the ignorance of others as well. Now it says here, as you can see surrounded, it says around the world, to ensure people of the world are able to benefit from digital transformation. That tells you that the whole world is going to be digitized. You know, the whole one world currency, quote unquote, theory, the whole cashless society, the whole IDs being digitized, having to do everything with QR codes and scanners, and all these things are slowly laying the groundwork for that. Also, it says here, realize the economic and social potential of the digital economy, which means that the economies around the world, they want to tie them together into one for the purpose of having that one world order. And it's not just a new world order, you can also consider it a one world order, because everything will be tied in digitally, so that you won't be able to, if you're locked out completely. Revelation 13 actually says no man will be able to buy or sell. You can understand why. You can't even buy a ticket to leave where it started, or you can't even go to accomplish anything, because you are not a part of the system, right? So we see that this act here, Declaration for the Future, is laying the groundwork for nations around the world to cooperate with the idea of a one world government. Now, it's under the wonderful guise that here we're going to provide internet access for all, interoperability, exchange of information, development of resources, sharing of markets, supporting small and large businesses. All of these things are what they stated. Are the benefits of having an internet that is open and free to all. But what are some of the things that are tied in it? We see tied in it principles for a one world government, one world digital economy, all tied into into one. And it's interesting, the bullying taking place that United States bullies others using their currency. I suppose for those who do not come on, who seem to step out of line, it may be that they too are going to be bullied by reason of the internet. We'll shut you off of the internet if you don't do this. And so these things are just, you know, it's sad, but the Bible says it, all the world wandered after the beast, and America is the one who speaks on behalf of the beast to the world. So we have to become intelligent to these laws and make practical preparations for what is to come. All right. So in the third highlight, it says bolster resilience to disinformation and misinformation. Now that one really got my attention. Bolster attention to disinformation and misinformation. Basically, disinformation and misinformation is a matter of interpretation. So if it is that you say something that I don't agree with, it can easily be classified as misinformation or disinformation. And that misinformation or disinformation is seen as something that is down to interpretation. All right, it's down to interpretation. If we go ahead, state-sponsored or condoned malicious behaviors on the rise, including the spread of misinformation and cybercrime. So once again, this document has strong focus on misinformation and on disinformation. Down the last section, it says to eradicate disinformation and foreign malign activity is used to sow division and conflict between individuals or groups in society, undermining the respect for and protection of human rights and democratic institutions. Right? Democratic institutions, human rights. It's interesting that they say this because if we go back to the previous slide, it says bolster resilience to disinformation and misinformation. Many of the persons who were canceled on YouTube, who were restricted on YouTube, were actually professionals. They're medical doctors who were qualified in their field to speak on the matter, who were intelligent enough, but they were spreading misinformation and disinformation. And so as a result, they were censored, right? So the interpretation of misinformation and disinformation in this article can be defined as any information that is outside of the accepted and present narrative. The popular narrative, the accepted narrative, anything outside of that will be considered disinformation or misinformation. Because we saw what happened previously. And the surprising thing about it is that the very document spoke about the same, within the same document. It's almost hypocritical, and I'll read it to you. It says, reaffirm our commitment that actions taken by government authorities and digital services, including online platforms, to reduce illegal and harmful content and activities online, be consistent with international human rights law, including the right of freedom of expression. America, the White House, wrote this declaration for the future of independence after all of what happened during COVID with censorship, the online platform, and then came out and just, as though nothing happened, yes, we're going to ensure freedom of human rights, including the right to freedom of expression, while encouraging diversity of opinion and pluralism without fear of censorship and harassment or intimidation. Now, this sounds like something really nice, but we know that that was not the case during COVID. That was not the case. As a matter of fact, I couldn't upload one of my videos during COVID. So that should tell you that this is a matter of interpretation. And I do hope that the other signatories are taking note and are carefully considering if they should be a part of this, because this can go south very easily, because while saying one thing, it makes caveats for combating misinformation and disinformation, and that we know misinformation and disinformation is anything outside of the popular opinion. It's not going to be a fair game. It won't be a fair game. But not only that, it says here in the last in the previous slide, disinformation and foreign malign activity is used to sow discord and conflict between individuals or groups in society, which means that conflict between individuals or groups in society. So therefore, I am a Seventh-day Adventist, and I preach that the beast of Revelation 13 is the papacy, and she'll return to her wicked ways, and she will persecute those that keep the commandments of God. And that will be seen as sowing discord. Do you understand? So as a result, we're at the point wherein the love theme, you cannot give an opposing view, you cannot give a constructive criticism, you cannot speak history, because it can be considered as sowing discord. And so these words cannot be left to just sit there on paper. What do you mean? Because at the same time, it also says you're going to be guaranteed, you would not be discriminated based on your religious or your race or your gender. But at the same time, there are clauses that prevent the free expression as a religion, which you're entitled to, without fear of censorship, harassment, or intimidation. Very interesting. Very interesting. To the point so much that the United States went ahead to form a governance board, and George Orwell wrote a book, describing these times, and it's very much coming into form. But it says Biden puts disinfo on ice, scraps Orwellian Department of Homeland Security board. Very interesting that this board was formed to monitor misinformation and disinformation. It was put there to do that. But then the appointed leader of the board made a song on TikTok, and many persons cringed at the song. While herself, by many critics, have been accused of being a purveyor of misinformation. And now it is that the board was put on pause and is being reviewed, while she has resigned. Now, many persons have said that the board has been scrapped, but I want you to read and understand something that the current White House Secretary Jean-Pierre had to say about the work of the misinformation by the Department of Homeland Security. She says here, the Secretary has requested the HSAC's final recommendation within 7 days. The board will not convene and its work will be paused, but the department's critical work across administrations to address disinformation that threaten the security of our country will continue. The spokesperson said, the work doesn't stop. Jean-Pierre said at the White House, we're still going to continue the work. DHS is still going to continue the work. So the Department of Homeland Security is still going to continue the work. Department of Homeland Security is still going to continue the work. All right, so don't get your hopes up. Don't make yourself too happy, because the declaration for the future of the internet is already written. So even if the the disinformation governance board is no longer existent, DHS is going to be working for the accomplishment of the declaration for the future of the internet, which includes the managing of misinformation and disinformation. So many persons say, well, hooray, should have been scrapped long time ago, but nonetheless, it's still there. And nonetheless, it can still be effected against you. So the DFI, as far as the alarmist report is concerned, is a very intolerant document. While proposing to provide equitable and non-discrimination based on religion, freedom of expression without fear of censorship, it wants to reduce the harmful content, is what it says. But we understand their definition of harmful content. YouTube banning actual doctors opposing views during COVID, but also if one religion warns against another, they are considered as sowing seed of discord, especially leading denominations which when we started the alarmist report, we identified that it is the leading denominations that will become the main support, the majority, which of course is Catholicism, and they are the ones who will especially be taken under the care of the state, and so as a result of that, it's going to be considered a crime to be going against the majority. It's going to be a crime to go against the majority, the well-established and popular opinion. We have seen that. This is not conjecture. So we have just juxtaposed laws. We saw what the 21st Century Cures Act made provision for, that quickly accelerated, that quickly laid the groundwork for many of the things that took place in 2021 to take place, the 2020 and 21 to take place. Now we're at the juncture where the Declaration for the Future of the Internet, what will it allow to take place? It is going to be an even more interesting future. And so we see that we have to make Christ our shelter. We have to be praying for wisdom, that our steps may be ordered of the Lord. And so as we transition into our final segment, please stay tuned. Remember to like, share, subscribe, share with family members and friends. Try to ensure that we secure liberty of conscience, we secure our liberties, and ensure that persons are well aware. Listen, this is not any small matter. You may be busy, you may be going to your work, you may be getting your job, maybe going to school, but you have to understand the principles that affect your daily life. So remember, please share, please make persons aware, and please stand up for liberty in whatever way you can, whether by speech, article, video. All right? Thank you. See you at our next and last segment. All right, welcome back to our last segment of the Alarmist Report. And I am Joel Grant, and we're just here. I'd like to touch on the last segment, the last topic, which is focusing on guess who is the ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to Jamaica. Well, the U.S. ambassador to Jamaica is none other than Ambassador Nick Perry. And an ambassador is appointed to a country to represent the interest of that country in that country. So it takes care of the issues pertaining to its citizens in that country, helps with administrative efforts, and also serves as a bonding line between both countries. And we have seen in the past wherein ambassadors have gotten involved in the local activities of that country, to the effect that some have been given persona non grata. Now, in this context, I find it to be a very interesting mix. The reason being is Ambassador Nick Perry is an assemblyman, or was an assemblyman, in the District of New York, right? And he had put forth a bill that you can see on your screen, 416 on January 6, 2021, and that bill had some very interesting clauses in it. And I'd just like to share what those clauses actually have to say. It says that removal and detention of cases, contacts, and carriers who are or may be a danger to public health. Other orders, the provisions of this section shall be utilized in the event that the governor declares a state of health emergency due to an epidemic of any communicable diseases, right? Then it says here, upon determining, and that's just, so the first one deals with removal and detention of anybody, of any carriers who may be a danger. It doesn't say you are a danger. It says you may be a danger. So that may leaves the door for the assumption that, well, it's quite a few of them gathering there. So because quite a few of them are gathering, we should go and just detain them, because more than likely they may have COVID-19. They may be spreading COVID-19. Not verifiably sick people, but persons who are maying. And so that is the danger of the law that he proposed. in New York as the assemblyman. And why did I choose to bring this up? Well, because in Jamaica, the prime minister himself came up with a law that was considered really not beneficial to the country in the sense of the DRMA. And then under the DRMA, Jamaica saw one of his most oppressive time periods. Disaster Risk Management Act. The government made over $280 million in income of violation fees. It was a cash cow for them, and it was very oppressive. You had to wear masks. You had to wear masks in public. You couldn't go to the funeral. You couldn't go to weddings. Limiting of gatherings. It was so powerful. And then now you have someone, Nick Perry, who proposed this same oppressive bill, who will also now be an ambassador in Jamaica. Good Lord, I wonder what's coming next. I'm not saying that, that's the plan, but it seems to be a very interesting link up. DRMA, detention and removal. So DRMA was that type of law that did not really have any respect to as it pertains to the rights of the persons or the input from anyone else except the prime minister, to the point where the opposition minister Mark Golding made a point on it. So this is showing you that COVID-19 was a period of some really bad laws that have made the oppression of persons possible. Now let's take a read at what the opposition minister states, and you can find this article on the healthyreforms.com, www.healthyreforms.com website, where you'll be able to find the title Jamaica's Pope of a Prime Minister. Under that article, you'll find the very interesting things that took place during that time period, the hypocrisy and the contradictions that took place. And you'd want to read that article because it will give you a very interesting perspective, right? So now, this is what the Prime Minister says, published in Jamaica Observer on March 24th. He says, as a lawmaker, I'm thinking about the possibilities that may come down the line. Of course, you have to, as a lawmaker, think about the possibilities that may come down the line. It allows a Prime Minister to determine, with the DRMA, that a particular conduct is a criminal offense. That, to me, is bad law. So it is the Prime Minister who determines whether something is a criminal offense. It's not a body of lawmakers sitting down and setting criteria and making exemptions and making penalties. It is left to the Prime Minister. That is what DRMA is, and it's considered Disaster Risk Management Act. It says where a disaster is declared by the Prime Minister or by the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, it is then open season to what measures ought to be put in place to respond to that crisis. Previously, those measures were not enforced by criminal sanctions. Now they will be, right? Now this is being said in juxtaposition to the fact that Nick Perry, the US ambassador to Jamaica, was someone in the US who made certain proposals, make propositions that were very much, if he links up with the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister still has the DRMA on and he makes suggestions to the Prime Minister, which it seems that, US needs Jamaica, you understand? And so as a result of that, could it be that we can see greater, a reflection of these policies in Jamaica? That Nick Perry was not successful in executing in New York. Oh yes, and just to add to that, this will add an icing to the cake. So Nick Perry, when he put it out, that person should be removed and detained, and not only that, it is the governor who determines the length of the detainment. There was no time period on the detainment. It is very interesting to note that he came out with his response when he withdrew it. And this is what he said: conspiracy theorists and those who spread misinformation online are once again trolling on social media and posting concocted stories about A.4.1, A416. Now, notice he used the word misinformation. No, I do not know all the things that were posted in regard to his his proposed law. But like Mark Golding, you'd have to now think that, listen, what is going to come down the line? That's what New Yorkers, that's what Americans were thinking. Americans were thinking, okay, we need to detain somebody under an assumption. How long are they going to be detained? Oh, as the governor sees fit, moving all these powers from a group of people to one person, to one body, to dictate whether or not you should be detained. And so we see that the groundwork is being laid for greater oppressions. And we have to be very mindful. And so that is all that we have to present today on the alarmist report. Scripture says, and that knowing the times, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we first believed. The night is far spent, the days at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness and put on the armor of light. And Isaiah 10 verse 1 says, woe unto those that decree unrighteous decrees, that make grievous prescriptions. Woe unto them. It's a woe to them, secular lawmakers, not to overstep their God-given boundaries. And we pray, as we fight for liberty, as we fight for our rights, we by voice, pen, not violence, not by hate, but by intelligent appeals, and we bring attention to what is very important. Bring attention to what is very important for this time, and recognize how dangerous these laws are. All right, so this is the alarmist report. I'm Joel Grant. Thank you for staying, for watching. Remember to like, share, and subscribe with your friends, family members, as we try to uphold liberty, freedom of conscience, and the principles that God has established for every man to enjoy inalienable rights, right? Under no circumstances should they be eroded. You should be able to go where you want to go, when you want to go, without having to sign a paper and disclosing all of your information. But we see that the world is somewhat turning, but for those who are still conscious, for those who are dead, we try to awaken, we try to arouse, we try to press forward in the direction that is right. Now, we are just wrapping up. What's our summary? So we looked on this 21st Century Cures Act. And we saw the 21st Century Cure Act, well written, made the way possible for Operation Warp Speed. We saw that Operation Warp Speed made it possible. Operation Warp Speed made it possible for the vaccines to roll out in a short 6-month period. When they roll out in short 6 months, we saw that they were able to make these mandates and these demands within a whole year. Started with a law. Now we see the Declaration for the Future of the Internet being proposed, and signatories, not just America, basking in their own glory, but somehow America wanting to share liberty, is now encouraging individuals to sign on to this so that we can have a unified, interoperable internet space. But to combat misinformation and disinformation, to create a digital one-world economy, we see something very interesting. And now, even Nick Perry, when he withdrew, he said it's considered misinformation. Persons being thoughtful are spreading misinformation. Persons stating that the supposed outcome may be this or that are spreading misinformation when the law has not properly defined what is a part of, how far it will go. And so we see that we have to be intelligent to these laws, pay attention to them, and protest as soon as they come, because fortunately Bill A416 was withdrawn because persons raised their voice about this detention. And so we have to raise our voice, and we have to let persons know that we stand for liberty of conscience. Until next time, we need to know the times. This is Joel Grant on the Alarmist Report. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment, of course. And as well, you can email me at info@HealthyReforms on issues that you'd like me to touch on, or if you'd like to share information, info@healthyreforms.com. I greatly appreciate it. And leave a comment and let me know what you think about what has been presented so far and what may have been overlooked. Thank you very much. Bye.